I'll never utter that name again. Mayor Fetterman.
Happens a lot. I feel comfortable going on record saying I'm the first small-town mayor in America that can say they had David Byrne open for him. So I'm the proud father of a toddler, and if you've ever seen the game, in a book, there's a group of objects, and they say, pick which one that doesn't belong. And I'm that object that doesn't belong on this distinguished panel in front of me, but not just visually, but also in terms of the great minds that are on the panel with me. I asked for a couple moments to put my town in context because I suspect many of you have not heard of it. Otherwise, you probably would be thinking, why is Michael Nutter's bodyguard talking to us about urban affairs? As I said, I am there at Braddock, Pennsylvania, and Braddock is, geographically speaking, outside of Pittsburgh. It is incorporated in 1867, and our population now is under 2,200, down from over 20,000 back at its height. Why is Braddock famous? Why is Braddock of note? Why, it's where Andrew Carnegie, the richest man that ever lived, got his start. His first steel mill that employed the Bessemer technique. He got his start and built his mill. It was the first mill of its kind, and it's actually the last mill in the Pittsburgh area in operation. This is what Braddock looked like in 1955. It's his downtown main drag. Looks like much of the city that we walk outside, would have back in 1950. Fast forward to today. I'm sorry, this is the 1929 business. They moved them around on me. Just a brief expose here. The 1929 business directory, you have 30 tailors, 14 furniture stores, the density of what would be modern day Brooklyn back in its heyday, back in its apex. Today, all those numbers drop down to zero. Braddock is the poorest community in Allegheny County. We again lost 90% of our population, and 90% of our town is actually in a landfill somewhere. Braddock, as I mentioned, is the poorest community in the region. That's not a typo. This is going to cause a lot of you from New York to go into sticker shock, but the median price of a home in our town is under $4,800. Median household income, you look we're at 17.5, whereas Pennsylvania is at 45. So we're the poorest community in the region, and unemployment generally trends 300% higher than the national average. These are examples of Braddock's old architecture that are long gone, unfortunately. This building, actually, I'd like to point out in presentations, is not in the process of being torn down. It actually fell apart after a storm. Old JCPenney store. This is Braddock's unique problem. What can be done, if anything, in a town that's lost 90% of its population? What can you do in a town that is racked by violence and many people have given up hope? We put all of our kids to work over the summer, over 100 kids during the summer. If you put it on a per capita basis, that would be as if the city of Pittsburgh hired 10,000 kids. We repurposed abandoned structures and put stained glass, fixed up that church into a community center. Abandoned houses now repurposed to serve as housing for foster kids that have exited the system that otherwise would have been homeless. We take the largest vacant lot in our main thoroughfare, that's our main downtown drag, and repurposed it as urban gardens. It's the only green space in Braddock. Braddock didn't have any parks or recreational facilities. Other vacant spots, urban agriculture. Braddock is a food desert. Does not have a market in town, a grocery store in town, I should say. So we have a 2-acre urban farm, creates jobs. Legacy arts, culture has been very important for our community. That's the new Welcome to Braddock sign that's 12 feet by 12 feet. Demonstration apiary. Bees love abandoned buildings, who knew? So instead of tearing them down with the buildings, we actually created our own apiary. Outdoor bread oven. Culture, again, Braddock, we have block parties now every year, whereas that didn't occur. Easter egg hunts for the kids. We make a big deal out of every holiday in town. During the summer months now, we send around an ice cream truck. Normally an ice cream truck would never go make our rounds in our community. We pay for all the ice cream up front, and it's handed out free to the children. I wrestle kids for my paycheck. And I've never lost. We opened the first art gallery in the area in an abandoned school. An arts collective. We've been pilfering artists from New York City, actually. First green business in the area. This is an example of urban homesteading. Buy this home for $5,000, and you can see what a little elbow grease and a DIY ethic can do for you. Kind of a headline sampling. I went to the Post-Gazette, Googled did a search for Braddock. These were the headlines that came up. Braddock was an extremely, it was not uncommon to have several homicides during the year, shootings, what have you. As of 2011, as you can see, with the introduction of culture and on these other aspects, we've had police calls drop now almost nearly 50%, and knock on wood, we've gone 3 years without a homicide. They say that those that God seeks to destroy, he first makes proud. So I have to say, add to that, about 3 hours ago, we had a young man, a 15-year-old, grazed in the cheek by a bullet in town. I just got off the phone with my police chief. Thankfully, he was fully expected to recover, but it's something that never leaves. It's never far from your mind. So it's a tragedy all around. And then finally, if it's queued up, some of you may have seen our community on the Levi's campaign. I don't know if it's queued up, but Braddock was featured in the 2010 Levi's advertising campaign. I don't know if the commercial's queued up.
Dig in our mind the whole day through. To dig is what we like to do. And while we dig, we always sing. For when you dig, there ain't a better thing than a tune. You can whistle or can too. Hi-ho, to make your troubles go. Just keep on singing all day long. Hi-ho, hi-ho.
90% of our town is in a landfill somewhere, so reinvention is our only option.
Positively can't go wrong with a hi-ho.
Funds. The partnership with Levi's paid to rehabilitate our community center for our youth and a lot of other projects in town. So it's been a really productive partnership. And I just want to thank everybody for being here this evening. And like I said, a schnook like me up here in this distinguished company is who to thunk it. So thank you very much for having me here, and it was a pleasure.
I'm supposed to give $5 to somebody. Next, from Seattle, Greg Nichols.
Well, thank you and good evening. One of the things that you'll notice about each mayor is that we'll talk about the place from which we come. And that's an important part of the job of mayor. You have to love that place and you have to invest yourself in it. So let me tell you a little bit about Seattle. It's 3 time zones away, as I've learned painfully in the last 24 hours. It is a very creative, I thought it was the most beautiful city in the world, but I've been corrected here tonight by my colleague. It is a very creative place, and the history of Seattle revolves around that. If you think about Bill Boeing coming to Seattle to build airplanes 100 years ago, that led to the 707, that led to the jet age that helped to shrink our globe. Bill Gates and Paul Allen deciding to develop their software there, which helped lead to the information age, which helped to shrink our globe. And most creative of all, the good folks at Starbucks who figured out how to charge $3, here in Manhattan $4 for a 50-cent cup of coffee. And we stand in line all over the world to participate in their creative act. So Seattle is a creative city, and that's important because the challenges that we're faced with in the 21st century are going to require an incredible amount of creativity and innovation. Now, outside of Seattle, I am best known for the work that I've done on climate protection. But I have to confess to you that that was not at the top of my agenda when I was elected in November of 2001. It was a few weeks after 9/11, and the safety of the people of my community was on the front burner. It was the beginning of a very deep recession in our part of the world because we build airplanes in Seattle, and Boeing was laying off 30,000 people. The dot-com bust was occurring, and people weren't traveling, so waiters and people who worked at our convention center were being laid off. 100,000 people were laid off in that recession in our region. So getting people back to work and getting economic opportunities was the front burner. And like most people, I thought climate change was happening. I thought it was important as a human being that we do something to protect our climate. But I assumed we had smart people in Washington, D.C. working on the problem. And I thought we had the luxury of some time. And I was wrong. And for me, the aha moment came in the winter of 2004 and 2005, which in the Pacific Northwest was a very dry and a very warm winter. The ski season in the Cascade Mountains was canceled, which was a tragedy for thousands of people. For me as mayor, it presented a particular challenge because the snow in the Cascades, when it melts in the spring, we capture it and we use it for water for Seattle and for about 1 million people who live around Seattle. And we capture that snow melt, we run it through turbines, and we create green electricity. So if there's no water, if there's no snow, there's no water, there's no power. It got to the point where the mayor of Tacoma, Washington, and I held a press conference where we urged people to shower together. And even in Seattle, that is considered a radical thought. So it became clear to me that we were at risk. It wasn't just going to be people in hot places or really dry places. It was going to be everywhere. And so that happened at the same time that a little treaty called the Kyoto Protocol was going into effect in 141 countries, but not in the United States of America. So I took the opportunity on that day to pledge that Seattle would reduce our carbon emissions by the amount called for in the Kyoto Treaty. And I knew as well that if it were just Seattle, we're a pretty small slice of greenhouse gas emissions in this world, and it would be purely symbolic. And as a mayor, I know that it's very difficult to get people to change their behaviors for purely symbolic reasons. And so I challenged mayors across the country to join with me in making that pledge. And before I left office at the end of 2009, 1,050 mayors had signed the pledge to reduce their emissions by 7%. Now, as I was urging those mayors to join with me, I took on a bit of a responsibility, and that was to kind of walk our talk, to show that it actually could be done. And so we went about it in a fairly disciplined manner. We decided first to lead by example. And the city government reduced its emissions by 60% from 1990 levels. We did it without eliminating basic services. We did it without breaking the bank. We showed that it could be done. Next, we engaged the leadership of the community, the political leadership, the environmental community leadership, the civic and business leadership, to draw up a plan for how we as a community of 600,000 people could reduce our emissions as we had promised. And then finally, when we had that plan, we engaged the entire community. We literally went door to door talking to people about how they could change their individual behaviors, whether it was putting in different light bulbs or reducing the flow of their showers or putting in more insulation or what have you. They could take individual action that would make a difference, that could be emulated across their neighborhood, across our city, and across cities throughout America. And one of the things that you quickly understand is that cities play a vital role in this, because most of the people on this planet now live in cities, first time in human history. And the vast majority of